The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the new home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters. It's also the new home for Autism Live, and we're coming to you from our new studio on the 18th floor of Tower 1. Very excited to be here with you on this wonderful Wednesday morning when everybody, I think, is officially all the way back to school. We're thrilled. This is a big day we've got planned for you here today. During our first hour, Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with you, an amazing expert in the field of autism. She's going to be answering your questions in real time. That's going to be coming up in just a few minutes. We call it Ask Dr. Doreen. In the second hour today, we have Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, the Executive Director of Autism Care and Treatment Today. She's going to join me for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've got some really special guests for you in that hour. One of our favorite guests, Dina Kimmel from We Rock the Spectrum, is going to be here. And she's bringing the owner of the newest We Rock the Spectrum with her to talk about what it's like to start that franchise and see those families come in and the difference that they make. I know many of you wrote in over the weekend that you were excited, those of you who are in upstate New York, you were excited that you saw We Rock the Spectrum open near you. So I know you have some questions about that, and we've got those ready for Dina when she's here. Really thrilled to be doing that as well. We'll look forward to sharing some news stories with you during that hour as well. But first, before we do anything else, we want to remind you that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want you to participate with us. We want to hear your thoughts, your concerns, your questions. Kelby is going to show you some of the different ways that you can get a hold of us here at the show, while I remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. Lots to do when you go to that site, but we hope that you will definitely sign up for our free email newsletter. That's a monthly newsletter, but you also get the weekly viewer guide that lets you know who's going to be on the show and some last-minute information. So hope you'll participate in that. It's free. But also when you go to the homepage, if you want to be watching the live show, click on the triangle that's on the computer. That'll start the live show running or the most recently recorded live show. And to the side of all that is what we call the live feature. It's a series of white boxes. Put your cursor in the one that says your questions. Start typing, hit enter. That's all there is to it. You don't have to log in. There's no username. There's no password. There's no credit card that's going to be charged in 14 days. It's completely anonymous. You can ask a question of any of our experts. We love it when you interact and give us feedback. Quite honestly, that's the truth. And it's totally free. You're totally anonymous. We do hope that you will include as much information as you can, especially about where you are in the world. That doesn't mean giving us your street address, but if you tell us where the closest major city is, it gives us an idea. My geography is not the best, so bear with me on that. But hopefully it gives us an idea of what resources might be near you, and that's a really helpful thing. I'm excited because it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us, and we're thrilled to have you here. You were just telling me that this is the only moment
I'm here.
You've touched down to come in here and be with us, and then you're off to distant lands, and I thank you for...
It's a pleasure. No, it's nice to actually have one day here this week because, you know, when you're gone.
Yeah.
I just came back last night and I'm leaving tomorrow, but it's good that I'm here on a Wednesday.
It is good that you're here on a Wednesday because we appreciate this. For those of you
Thank
who
you.
are new to the show, Dr. Grant-Pichet is truly, I believe, the preeminent expert in autism.
Thank you so much. Sharon.
In our time, I mean, what you have done for this field is absolutely amazing and breathtaking.
Oh, thank you.
And you've been working in this.
Enough.
Well,
Doesn't come to close to being enough.
well,
but
I appreciate that you feel that way and that you're nowhere near done and that you are still as young as you are because I know you've got big things ahead of you, which brings me to my next thing. Not only are you an expert in the field of autism, but you really are a visionary. You see things that are coming, you address them. It's so
Thank you.
exciting when a parent comes up to me and says, well, I don't understand why somebody doesn't do this. And I say, that's so funny because that's exactly what Dr. Grant-Pichet just put out or is just about to put out. You're always ahead of the curve. And I appreciate that as an autism parent.
Thank you very much. But today I was just reading these questions that you put in front of me a few minutes ago, and it's like it makes me sad. There's so many families that are just struggling, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that their children are really not receiving the number of hours of therapy they should be.
Yeah.
And as we go through them today, you'll see the predominant theme is, I get tiny amounts of support. What do I do?
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
crazy, and that's just sad to me because it shouldn't have gotten there so fast,
Yes. And I think we can both talk about that there are a lot of reasons why that might be happening.
Right.
But I also appreciate that you have come up with some solutions that are possible for anybody who is anywhere in the world if they have an internet connection.
I hope so, yeah.
So that's a remarkable thing. We do need to remind everybody, though, at the start of the show that in this format, we have lots of experts who are on the show, but there is not a single expert, including Dr. Grant-Pichet, who can give you individual specific advice in this format.
Right.
It doesn't lend itself to that because there's not enough of an opportunity to get to know what's really happening. So keep that in mind, but it is important to note that so many people are so grateful for the insight that you give when they ask a question about things to ask, things to look at. I think that that's really, really been helping so many people from the letters that we get from people.
Right. Well, I'm very encouraged by all of the parents who reach out to us and the teachers and even some classmates, which is amazing to me. But I know that the folks who are reaching out to us are the ones that are not yet completely underwater, and it makes me sad for the people who feel they're just defeated because there's so much to deal with, and honestly, really my goal in life is to try to make those people who feel completely defeated realize that they have some tools and that they shouldn't be defeated and that they can actually make some headway and overcome some of the obstacles they face.
Absolutely. You know what we say here on the show, hope is our favorite four-letter word.
Absolutely.
So I want to start, you mentioned a classmate, I want to start with a question that came in via email. I don't have it, I gave it to you.
Yeah, here you go.
Okay, great. So somebody wrote and said, I've got a classmate with Downs and severe autism. He's 16, nonverbal. He makes no words or sounds, but does not understand PECS, but does understand ASL, American Sign Language. And if you do talk to him, he completely misunderstands as if you lost him at the first word. But the ASL with him is like a sponge, and you have to talk to him through ASL. My question is, does he have autism or is he deaf?
Right. And that's a really smart question. It's a great question. Obviously, we shouldn't depend on someone's understanding of sign language to identify what their diagnosis is. Mm-hmm. So either one is possible. Generally, people with autism will understand some form of visual language better than verbal language, whether it be a PECS system, picture exchange communication system, or ASL, because visual is something that remains longer, so that you have a longer period of time to process it. Having said that, it makes it complicated for someone to look at someone who's processing ASL and say, wait a minute, is that all he needs? I think that's what this individual is saying, is like, maybe he just has hearing impairment. Autism is a little bit more than hearing impairments, like, so it's, you know, the individual with autism will have lack of eye contact, will, even if you really get in their face and do ASL, they may understand it to some extent, but not like someone who's 16 who would have learned ASL a long time ago, perhaps, if they just had hearing impairment. So, you know, if you're worried about this person, please try to get through to their parents or guardians and have them look at the diagnosis. It's very kind of you, to our viewer, to be so concerned about a classmate. On the other hand, aside from your question, you have a very bright perspective, which is, hey, this individual does really great with ASL, and we should be using ASL as their main form of communication. So perhaps that's something else you want to be able to push to the teacher and to the guardians, is that, wow, your son or daughter makes really, or it is a boy, does really, really well with ASL, and perhaps everyone should really try to teach more ASL.
Yeah, really amazing. It's amazing to think about the fact, I used to be naive enough that I thought that if you had autism, you didn't have other stuff. Like, how crazy and naive is that, right? But I've now found out that there are people who have autism and are blind.
Yes.
There are people who have autism and are deaf.
Correct.
There are people who have autism and everything else that's underneath the sun.
It's so true. You know, I had and then there are people who have autism and they're not really deaf, but they have problems receiving information auditorily. So that's probably the reason that they do better visually. I remember I had a little boy once. He was from New York. It was a long, long time ago, and the family actually moved here so that I could work with him. He was such a really intelligent kid. He was a little guy. He was like 2 or 3 years old, and he had taught himself all the different things that he needed. So for instance, he could turn on the VCR, pop out whatever was in there, put in his favorite tape, to put on the TV, make sure they were connected, play his favorite stuff. You know, like, he had those,
right.
And he was 2 or 3. He was a really little guy. But he had very, very little, if any, interaction with anyone else. And we brought him over and we tried very hard to teach him. And it was really, really difficult. And it wasn't until we did a bunch of testing and we realized that he was completely deaf and he had visual problems. In other words, he had problems with binocularity and focus and all these other visual things, so that he really had a very hard time receiving information through his eyes and through his ears. So of course it was very difficult. We did, in fact, with him have to go to ASL because he could feel it. But, you know, it's very difficult for some children, and that's a really important thing to note.
And you also made me think about the fact that there's a whole set of lessons in skills in the academic curriculum that are about phonemic, am I saying it right, awareness, for kids to be able to identify sounds and understand them, especially diphthongs and things like that, because we have kids that struggle with that and don't come to that till later. That they can sort out what the sounds are that they're hearing and understand them. And there are actual lessons in skills having to do with that and to strengthen that.
And there's actual tests as well. The Woodcock-Johnson test of auditory discrimination. That's a really, really good test. It's and you'd be shocked. Like, I used to give that test to a lot of kids in the early years, because it was pretty shocking for me to see that, for instance, I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, it was like a child would not hear the last sound of a word. So like, if you were trying to teach moon, they would hear moo and would continuously try to like touch the picture of a cow. And it wasn't until we started doing these tests that we realized the children are really not hearing things correctly. And that's kind of important, because you can train that. You know, you can train to some extent. If there's no structural damage, you can actually train some better discrimination. And it makes a huge difference. The other thing that I've noticed, Shannon, is that it also makes a huge difference for children to have just a good vocabulary. Like, sometimes with children who are pretty high functioning, they slow down and they have a very hard time processing because it's too much. Like, it's rapid speech. So, you know, if you're a speaker of a second language, you'll know that you may master a language to some extent, but when you talk to natives from that country, they are so rapid that it's hard for you because you have to keep up with their speed. Every language has a different speed.
Yeah.
And, when I am with people who are foreigners, they always tell me they have a much better time understanding me because I speak so slowly. And Americans have a tendency to speak pretty fluently and rapidly, and we slur various words as we go through them, and like through them. Which is really through them, and that sort of thing, and it becomes very hard. And I think our kids, to some extent, go through that because they're learning this language of English as a second language. They're learning it over time, and it's like very actively thought about when they use words.
Yeah. It's a fascinating area to study. I want to move now to a question that we had that came in many different forms. We got it both email and on the website. And it's a subject that we've been touching on a lot in the last week for a couple of different reasons. We'll talk about that in a second. But they said, greetings. There are many voices in the autistic advocate community that are negative about ABA therapy. I've looked far and wide for a counter viewpoint, but I haven't found much written by autistic people in support of ABA. Could you provide some links to writings by adult or teen autistics who are satisfied with ABA? And of course, there's been a firestorm because a couple of weeks ago in the LA Times, there was an op-ed piece. There's a book out called Neurotribes talking about, is there an actual increase in autism or is there not? Were these people around always and we just didn't notice it? Written by a gentleman who has been covering autism stories he's a medical investigator. He's been covering autism stories for more than 20 years, and it's a subject that really fascinates him. But he had some things to say about how important it is for people who are on the spectrum. There's the phrase about nothing about us without us. This is the phrase that our self-advocates who are adults who are on the spectrum are pretty vehement about, that they want to be included in all conversations about them. We've talked about this with a lot of different guests. And I have said as a parent that what's significant to me is the us. Who's the us? Because as a parent of a child on the autism spectrum, when you say us, I think the autism community, and I count myself in that group, and I'm all about us. And I understand that my friends who are on the spectrum and who are adults, when they say us, they're not talking about the parents.
Right.
It's a different thing for them, and I get that.
Right.
So that's a difference of opinion that I hope that we can continue to work on. But a lot of our adults who are on the spectrum that are very outspoken will say things about the ABA that they received 25 and 30 years ago, and they're very outspoken about it having been something traumatic in their life, and parents are hearing that. And they're making decisions on whether they should do ABA and how much ABA they should do. And I know, we've had conversations about this before. I am going to let you talk in a second.
No, please, I'm interested.
I know that there are individuals that I've spoken to that had ABA 30 years ago, and it is not the ABA that anybody is doing now if it's quality ABA. I know people who have shared that their aversives were used on them, and they feel that they were tortured. And I in no way want to take anything away from the negative experience that they had. And I understand what this person is saying, where are all these people saying positive things? And I think what's significant to me, I get to meet these people. You've gotten to meet these people. They aren't as forthcoming as the other group of people because they're leading happy lives.
That's exactly right. So, I have a lot to say about this, and I think it starts with, you're absolutely right. So it's kind of like, when you go to a place of business or someplace, a restaurant or school, whatever, and you have a bad experience, you're very vocal about it. You will get online, you go to Yelp, you'll go to whatever it is, and you'll write a horrible review because you feel very passionate about getting your anger out. Okay, great. But when you're happy, it's very much less likely to go out there and actually say, this was the best experience I had. And that's unfortunate. It's just human nature, is that anger is much more vocal and passionate, expressive emotion than happiness and satisfaction. So I agree with you that I think if there's much said about personal experiences of 30 years ago, then it is perhaps because the individuals who are not speaking out are actually leading happy lives. Now, we know many such individuals, and they have actually actively become successful in other fields in whatever it is they're doing. As you know, one of my first children who went through the program finished his doctoral degree, recently got married. I have many other children who are adults, of course, now, and are teachers themselves or are doing very, very well in some avenue of life. And I guess what I want to say about it is that, yeah, I agree that there's an us that we never will understand. There's a group of adults who have Asperger's or have high-functioning autism who are very vocal about autism. And I think then there's the group of parents. And I think just like anything else that, our children, when they're children, obviously you as the parent are the voice for that child. And you may not know what it's like to be living in those shoes, but nevertheless, you are the guardian and protector and voice for that child. It's like any other thing that a child might have. You might have a child who has hearing impairment, something very, very benign like hearing impairment, or any other, like a medical issue. And it is the parent's ultimate decision and right to make decisions for that child until they become adults. So as a parent, I don't want any parent to ever feel like they shouldn't have the right or they don't have the right because they themselves don't have that problem. So, or whatever it is, affliction or disorder or difference, however you want to name it. If you have a child who's hearing impaired, it is your decision as a parent to decide whether or not you want to teach them American Sign Language. If you have a child who has a cold, it is your decision as a parent to decide whether you take them to a doctor or no, you're against medical treatment. I may not agree with the decision you make, but it is your decision and it is your right. So that's that. Let's not touch because with that ability to make decisions comes a tremendous amount of responsibility. And no one can in any way judge a parent's decision about their child, period. That's just that. It's kind of holy to me what the parent decides. Now, again, I think the other point I want to make about this is that sometimes we have groups of individuals with Asperger's who say sort of, we're not neurotypical and we don't want to be neurotypical, and why are you forcing us to become neurotypical? And that's actually a misunderstanding. No one is ever forcing anyone to learn or become neurotypical in any way. These are skills and tools that we use to help individuals on the ASD spectrum to be able to communicate with and manage the neurotypical environment. So if you would like to remain, for instance, the individual who's hearing impaired could potentially say, I refuse to communicate with anyone who's not hearing impaired, and I just want to remain in the world of hearing impaired individuals, and we have our own way of communicating, and that's that. Okay, I mean, that's a choice. But the truth is, there are many more people who are not hearing impaired, and you most likely will want to socialize with them, work in their environments, go to school in their environments, and so on. And so for me, it has never been a question that I would like to teach a child who has autism, which means they cannot communicate in any way their own needs, their desires, their wishes, they can't share socially and explain what happened to them that day and what they would like to aspire to do and what's important to them and what's not, and what makes them frustrated and angry and what makes them happy and all of those things, because they don't have language. It makes, it is clear to me that my job is to teach them language so that they can communicate, so that they can say what they like and don't like. So, it's for individuals who have Asperger's and are vocal about it, you have to realize that there's a whole population of people who will never get to your level of functioning unless we teach them. So we actually have to intervene in order for these people to get to a point where they can have a say in whether there should be more intervention or not.
Honestly, when my friends who are on the spectrum, who are adults, will get vocal and say something about, I say, here's the deal. All I want for my child is for him to be able to express himself the way you are. That's what I'm looking for.
That's exactly
I want
right.
for him to be able to say, I'm mad about
That's exactly
this.
right. Because, like this morning, Shannon, I was just on the CEO call. I mentioned that this morning I saw an article about a school in Australia somewhere where they have built they've built a cage for this one child who has autism. But you know what? That's reality too, and that's what existed before ABA.
Yeah.
So let's not criticize ABA. I can't even criticize ABA from 30 years ago. I'll tell you that maybe in some places, and those places actually still exist, some of them, there was extreme harshness and aversion therapy used. But in most cases, ABA has been pretty pure for 25 to 30 years, and it's been pretty good, and it's been all positive, and it has it used to be less diluted 30 years ago, where we used to go in and do 20, 30, 40 hours of ABA. And now when you say 40 hours of ABA, it's like, half of it is in school, which isn't really ABA. Half of it is social type of activities, which isn't really ABA, and is watering down the benefit and the effect of ABA. So, that's part of the problem. Now, I can't off the top of my head think of articles or written material by individuals who have recovered from autism through ABA, but we certainly have tons of footage from these individuals. I mean, the documentary Recovered has a lot of these people speaking pre and post, during, their teenage years and so on. And we have a lot of additional footage as well of those individuals.
And when I was thinking about this morning, about what places I wanted to point you to, it occurred to me that we have a video that I love, but it's a four-hanky affair. So one of the young people who is featured in the film Recovered is Brett Myler. And 5 years ago, when it was the 20th anniversary for CARD, it was in this amazing old Hollywood, beautiful, really intimidating building, I have to say.
Gorgeous place.
Gorgeous, with people in full-on ball gowns,
Right.
And it was sort of the who's who of Hollywood was there. I mean, Macy Gray was performing. This was a pretty spectacular event.
Yeah.
And this young 19-year-old gentleman got up and spoke, and we have the video for you. And I just want you to keep in mind, he's 19 and speaking to this huge room full of Hollywood elite, and I would have been shaking in my shoes, and I public speak every day of the week.
Was he even 19 then?
I think he had just turned
become
19.
Yeah.
And was college student, and this is a young man who was featured in the film Recovered as a child, and you get to see him in his teenage years. But he talks about how he feels about ABA at 19. So we're going to get the tissue and get ready, and then we'll come back and talk about this afterwards. But this is Brett Myler speaking for himself.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? My name is Brett Myler, and I recovered from autism when I was 8 years old due to the extraordinary and selfless efforts of Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet, Kathy Visconde, Evelyn Cub, and many other amazing therapists. How does a person show gratitude for being taken from a future of institutions and the inability to communicate even basic needs to getting to have a normal, independent life? What do you say to the people that gave up so very much to give you that life? Since I was 8 years old, my parents have always talked about this. If we saw a clearly autistic person now in public, it was always, do you realize that would have been you if not for Doreen? Or, imagine what your life would be like if they hadn't decided to be therapists and had done something else with their lives. Or, do you know what those people sacrificed? How much they gave up to get you here? Of course, I truck to a friend's house, none of it would be happening. I got home from work that night, and I went to my mother and said, the next time you talk to them, tell them I said thank you. Thank you for everything. At first she didn't know what I was talking about, but she got it after a few seconds and started to cry. She hugged me and said, don't worry, they already know. I told them. I'm told, but I don't really remember, that when I was 4 years old, one of my therapists really liked the song by the band Oasis called Wonderwall and taught me how to sing it. I guess it was super funny. My mom always heard my struggles in the words of that song, and they dedicated it to me when I graduated from high school. I thought it was nice, but what is a Wonderwall anyway? My mom said it's someone who gives up everything to do something that everyone else thinks is impossible. From what I have been told, it has been a very hard fight to get this kind of care funded and accepted to the point that it is now. And I have been told that CARD has had a major role in getting this kind of care to many children. I thank you for all that you have sacrificed to help me and those like me. So, at this time, I think it is only fitting to dedicate those same words from the song Wonderwall back to CARD, and especially to Dr. Doreen Grant-Piché. Here it goes. And all the roads you had to walk were winding, and all the lights that led you here are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how, because maybe I know you were the ones that saved me, and after all, you're my Wonderwall.
Absolutely amazing. We did not get to listen to it in the studio, and that by choice, because I couldn't have done the rest of the show. It makes me cry. But
It makes me laugh. It makes me so happy when I see him.
Well, you know what? I was there that night, and because I was covering it for the radio show that I was doing at the time, Everyday Autism Miracles. And I remember when he got up to speak, and it was, I mean, there was not a dry eye in the house.
Yeah.
People were just going crazy. It was absolutely amazing. And
Yeah.
I think it was the first time that maybe the second time that I had been in a place where I could talk to an adult who had recovered.
Right.
And to see him,
several of them were there.
yes.
Yeah.
But to see him talk in that forum and give that speech,
Right.
I mean, you know, I was like lit up like a Christmas tree, because there was so much hope in me about, okay, if that's possible. And I had seen Recovered, so I had seen him as a little boy.
Right.
And his mother was told, put him in an institution and walk away.
Right. As were many of the other children in those days, right?
Yeah.
And I love seeing those things, because I remember them when they were little.
Yeah.
You know, I totally remember Brett when he was a little guy. He was such a sweet little guy, you know, and as they grow up, they're just such adorable human beings. I just think, I don't know, I personally think they're better human beings, to be honest with you, because they just don't have a lot of the nonsense that typical people have, like ego issues. Like, you just don't, they're so real.
Yeah.
They so are not motivated by embarrassment,
Yeah.
you know, by avoidance of embarrassment. They're just pure and honest and nice, and they never learn bad stuff, you know.
There's no weird agenda, and polite. A couple of summers ago, there were 3 individuals who had recovered from autism who were working in the building with us, and they were just down the hallway from me. And, different times, different people would go to lunch, but I especially enjoyed, I'd be in the hallway and going to the elevator when those 3 guys were working on a project together. It was hilariously funny, I have to say, what they came up with in the end. But they would go to lunch together to powwow on it, and sometimes I would ride the elevator with them, and I just wanted to stay in the elevator for like a month. And they were always so the
Such a good time.
kindest. They would be holding the elevator and go, "Oh, you first," and which
I miss that. I really miss having those guys around. It was such a lovely period of time. It was like a kind of it was a great summer internship type
Yes.
thing for all three of them. One of them actually stayed on, but it was just such a great time to have them here, and they were so awesome, and they taught us so much. And the video that you're referring to, of course, was a gem because it was their view on how weird we are.
Yes.
And dealing with us.
It was
you know,
hilarious.
It was fantastic. It was the best ever. I have to find that video and put it up
It was
somewhere.
the highest. I mean, some of it you would only understand if you were working in the office, right? Because it was inside humor. But it was the best example of understanding humor from a really 360-degree perspective, that they were taking everybody's perspective as they were taking the. It was hilarious. It was a really happy, joyous thing. But the reason why they're not still here doing internships is because they went on to jobs, as you said. One of them, you know. But that's why
they
that
all
moment
went
in
on
time
to
couldn't
very
stay.
successful jobs.
Yes,
You know, one of them actually just got he's getting his master's now, and he's achieved quite a bit. He has a program that he's part of now at Columbia, I believe. Like, he's doing really, really well right now. They're all, I mean, it's just amazing when you look at it. I'd love to see that.
So we're going to try to find you more links, but there is one. You asked for a link about how do some of these
In fact, I
individuals.
think another one of them gave a speech that night as well. And I think that if you look up the CARD 20th Gala, 20th anniversary gala I think that was on YouTube. I'm not sure.
It's on that site. It's on the Card Inc. 1990 YouTube page.
Yeah. So there's another one. Jana gave a very good speech, if I'm not wrong.
I believe
and
you're
then
right.
they also, there's another event we did because when the film Recovered came out, and we had a number of screenings across the country, and they all got up and gave speeches, and those are out there too.
I haven't seen those. I'd like to do that. Okay, I'm going to move on to a couple of more questions here. My son recently got assigned a bus, third week into school. They have him on the bus for 1 hour and 20 minutes. My son does good on the bus, but not when it's a very long ride. He has a behavior that is like this. When a child cries, he cries. When a child screams, he screams, etc. Do you know the jargon for that behavior? Can you talk a little bit more about it, and how can we minimize it from what you've heard or seen? Often, if there are kids on the bus displaying this behavior, his entire day is thrown off and it really affects his academics. Also, do you know if I emailed the head of transportation, they can do something about the excessive bus time? It takes me 12 minutes to get to the school. I hate that.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, I think you can actually try to talk to his IEP team, or try to talk to them about the fact that the hour and a half or hour and 20-minute bus ride is really disruptive for him, and that perhaps they can change the route somehow so that he's last and that they get to school faster. So that would be a good thing to do anyway. But I mean, obviously this is he's just imitating behavior, and it's happens to be verbal behavior, so it could be a form of delayed echolalia.
Okay.
As for jargon, who cares what it's really called? He's just imitating behaviors that are not necessarily appropriate. Now, I think it could also, I mean, so let's just put that aside for a minute, and I think what's more important is that it throws him off, and it could be pretty disturbing to him. Like, you know, sometimes a lot of our kids are very sensitive to sensory stimuli, and the sound of someone crying or screaming could be quite disturbing to him. And you know, responding with imitation, I'm not sure why he's imitating. Perhaps he thinks he's supposed to imitate. Perhaps he's trying to get someone's attention, like saying, "Oh, this is what just happened. They screamed." Whatever the thing is, it concerns me because it is throwing him off and disturbing his whole day. What I would suggest that you do until you can get his bus schedule changed so it's a shorter period of time is, I would teach him to I would give him ways that he could occupy himself and stay within his own serenity, I suppose, during the bus ride. So one thing to do is to get him some Bose headphones, or headphones that are noise canceling headphones, which you can find decent noise canceling headphones for probably about $100, I would say. They really do block external noise. And then I would maybe give him some sort of iPod or something that allows him to listen to calming music, or even that allows him to watch something like on TV, or something that you pre-record. It could be an educational program. But essentially what you're doing is you will teach him when he gets on the bus to put his system on, plug it in, get started, and to take it off when he gets to school. And you know, it'll take some training, shaping to get that behavior under control, and you can certainly put that in his IEP so that someone is responsible for teaching that to him. But that's really the way to go, I would imagine, because you're not going to be able to avoid environments within which he will have someone screaming or crying, and then he'll feel like he has to imitate it and it throws him off. Whether, you know, you can shorten perhaps the duration of time on the bus, but sooner or later everybody has to learn how to internalize and shut out the world, and then be able to come back to the world. That's kind of like shifting attention. And it would be a good thing for him, I think.
Absolutely. Although being on a school bus is unlike anything else in terms of noise. And I will just tag on to what Dr. Grandpichet said, is that in your IEP, you can turn up the heat on the school a little bit by saying to them, this is a problem, and because I have an individualized education plan, and since you are making it that it's an hour and 20 minutes, then you have to provide the Bose headphones, because it's very likely that someone will take them away. You have to provide the device that will help him to withstand this. And I think probably you need to hire an aide to be on the bus with him to teach him how to do that, or you could change the bus route. And I have a feeling they'll change the bus route.
Or both, yeah.
Right.
I still think even if they change, you're a very good point. You know, I often forget how many things we're entitled to. And you are entitled to have, you know, you cannot have a situation where the bus ride throws his entire day off. So I just gave them a good idea. They need to follow through and actually train him with the Bose headphones and get him going so that it'll change his life.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to move on to Dear Shannon and Dr. Grandpichet, please help my 14-year-old school freshman who is very hardworking and has a heart of gold. In conversations, his response appears like he didn't hear parts of the question or didn't understand. Could it be my son's hearing is speaking, hearing us speak like the Charlie Brown adults, the womp 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 womp, those adults? What are the possible causes? How can we determine if it's hearing issue, auditory process, recall, or attention? Thank you so much for your advice and positive energy. I'm thankful to learn from your answers on all the viewer questions. And Shannon, your parent perspective and passion are very helpful. You are all amazing. Thank you. And it kind of hand in hand with the question that we had earlier about, you know, that auditory processing and hearing and all of those things. So in a 14-year-old, how do you figure it out?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's testing, so it's kind of important to do that testing. We were talking briefly about some auditory processing tests that exist. You should probably get in touch with an audiologist just to test hearing anyway and see how we're processing. And the tests will actually tell you if there's auditory processing problems or if hearing is fine and really what you're dealing with is processing. So to begin with, let's do that. Let's find that out. But having said that, often I find that here's a test you can do, is if you can write out stuff. And I don't know, your child is 14, I assume there's some reading ability. It helps a lot when our children have reading, because then you can test out and see if the whole thing is written out. Does the child process it better? That's almost an automatic you know, way to find out that there is an auditory problem. So, and often, as I said, I was actually talking about this earlier today, was that, you know, when you learn a second language or a third language, you may know all the words, but when they're put together and they're spoken rapidly, they turn into almost one big sound. And sometimes it's very hard for people to identify the individual words and be able to understand their meaning. So two things you want to test is if you slow down your speech like this, does that actually increase his understanding? And another thing is if you actually write it out and see if writing out will increase understanding. Now, I mean, you can use anything. You can use single sentences from a book and then test on the knowledge to see which one he understood better. I will tell you that some of our children, not all, but I kind of have a feeling it's more than half, have a delayed processing speed. So basically, when you tell them something, it takes them a couple of seconds to understand what was said. So that's another thing, is it could be, it's not necessarily the speed of your language, but that you have to wait a minute or two before they respond, because they're just digesting it, kind of just receiving that information. So it's a number of different things that you have to test. A good speech path can help you with determining these things as well. But as I said, you're one of our frequent viewers, and I would suggest you go through some of these tests yourself. Start with just saying things slowly. Like write out 10 questions that are 10 statements from a story, let's say, and start testing them. So you'll say the statement and you'll ask a question about it. You do it rapidly, and then you do another question very slowly and see if the questions come out better. And then you'll probably want to do a visual of the 10 different questions and see if reading it will help the individual. Then come back and let's talk about it.
Absolutely. I want to go to a question that came in on the live feature. Dear Shannon and Dr. Doreen, thank you for an amazing show and all your knowledge and desire to support families. I would really appreciate your advice. My husband, due to his work commitment, has to transfer overseas. My main concern is my son's ABA program. Our son has been having ABA since he was 2.5 and has made great progress. He is in mainstream school with ABA support now. When we move, he would still require an ABA shadow at school. The country we are being transferred to does not have ABA services, and it is almost impossible to bring, and of course I did something, I hate my iPad right now, sorry.
No, that's okay.
The country moving to does not have ABA services, and it's almost impossible to bring someone from the other country like the US due to visa work permits. We are really down to two choices: train someone locally, or I am considering shadowing my son myself. I wanted to ask your opinion regarding parent shadowing the child. I am very knowledgeable about ABA and my son's program, but not convinced that it is a good idea for me to be a shadow. Can you please help me with the pros and cons of parent shadowing the child?
Yeah, there's pros and cons, so let's talk about it. First of all, I mean, obviously the positive is that no one's going to be more attentive and more concerned about doing a perfect job than you as a parent, so that's a good thing. But having said that, the downside to you being the shadow is that he will react differently with you in the environment. Parents generally have a different relationship, and it's a little bit harder for them to become sort of the shadow or the therapist. He'll be very focused on you being present, and so that kind of muddies the waters a little bit. The other thing, of course, is that it leaves you very little time to do anything for your own life, and perhaps you have other children as well. So I think my suggestion would be that you do the shadowing, but you train someone while you're doing it. So in other words, as you may be the lead shadow even, or you may start shadowing, and then you will have someone with you learning from you what you expect them to do. And being a good shadow obviously is very important, and I would suggest that you gradually even change to sort of a Confederate shadow, or someone that your son doesn't even know is there to shadow him. Our process is obviously it's always a therapist first, and then the therapist gradually becomes an unknown therapist, so we'll switch to someone that the child doesn't even know is on his therapy team, just because we don't want the child to feel like there's always someone there watching them. And I think that's pretty important. I don't really know the functioning level of your child, so I can't say much more about that, but it is very possible to teach someone to be a good shadow, and you can certainly hire local people, and good luck with that, because it is kind of hard when you travel.
Absolutely. I'm getting a bunch of questions on the live feature. For Dr. Grandpichet, my son has had an ASD diagnosis, and the last assessment also diagnosed him with ADHD. We're seeing much more of that. The assessor made a comment that his ADHD impacted him more than his ASD. Can you talk about this dual diagnosis and what it would mean in terms of treatment? Would the ABA team have to shift focus? Would the session look different? If so, how?
Yes. That's a fabulous question.
Isn't
Thank
it?
you very much for asking that. The reason we're seeing more of ADHD diagnosis comorbidity with ASD is that it is just allowed. The DSM-5 is the first time that we're allowed to co-diagnose. So up till now, you were not allowed to diagnose ASD and ADHD together because it was kind of similar to diagnosing something like, let's say, bronchitis and pneumonia.
Right.
So it's kind of a more severe form of the same thing.
Right.
But they are kind of different, and it is important to be able to see those children who have symptoms of ADHD. Now, my suggestion, yes, sessions are a little bit different. How are they different? First of all, with ADHD, I'm one of those people that I strongly believe that with ADHD, the treatment is combination of medication and cognitive behavioral or behavioral intervention, so both together. I feel that a lot of children actually do much better when they are on ADHD medications, and the medications have improved significantly over the past 20 years, so I feel confident in saying this because I have seen a big difference. It helps the child calm down a little bit in terms of their speed of processing and therefore become more aware and therefore be able to attend better. I believe that when people have ADHD, they're just so on the go that they lose a lot of what goes on around them. They have a very, very hard time keeping track of what their goals are. They have a very hard time slowing down enough to listen to a complete sentence. They have a very hard time just not being scattered and like drifting off to other things all the time. So I think medication is also something you should consider at this point. But in terms of their sessions, yes, sessions differ pretty significantly. First of all, sessions should be shorter sit-down sessions because the person with ADHD will have a harder time staying seated for a period of time. So every maybe 2 or 3 trials, there should be some reinforcement available. The therapist needs to actually make sure that the individual, the child, is paying attention, and whether they need to speed up the session or slow down the session to make sure that happens is important. You will probably want to program in a lot of attention type lessons. We have a whole ton of lessons that focus on attention, and that is going to be the primary. And again, ADHD, you have 2 different types of ADHD. You have some individuals who just have problems with attention, right, and you have other problems who have problems with, have issues with impulsivity, speed, and so on. So you kind of have to identify if it's a hyperactive type, impulsive type, if it's both, what is it? Right. And once you've identified that, you work on those particular things. So if the person has problems with impulsivity, then we really will focus the ABA type intervention on teaching them how to be less impulsive. Yeah. And if they have a lot of problems with, let's say, attention, we will focus on their attention and so on. Okay. So that's kind of how it just brings in, it's almost like as I said before, when you do a test on a child with ASD and you realize they have slow processing speed, then one of the things you should be working on is increasing their processing speed. Yes. And with these children, with ASD, with ADHD, you already know there's going to be problems with attention and or hyperactivity and or impulsivity and all of those. And so whatever it is, you focus on fixing that in addition to teaching all the core content that the individual didn't learn.
Okay, so definitely talk to your ABA team about adding those lessons.
And the problem again, Shannon, is that most of the time people who are teaching ABA don't know anything about ADHD because they're not psychologists, they're BCBAs. Okay. And behavior analysts don't really care what the problem is, they do behavior analysis. Right. But what I'm saying is it's important for the behavior analyst to actually identify the core problems that your child has in the realm of ADHD. So for instance, a behavior analyst won't really know anything about the diagnosis of ADHD, okay? Whether it's like an impulsive ADHD, if it's a hyperactive ADHD, they won't know any of that. You only learn that in psychology, not in behavior analysis. So I would really make sure that you get a copy of your child's diagnosis, your ADHD diagnosis, get the psychologist who made the diagnosis, give you a clear view of what particular symptoms they saw that led them to give a diagnosis of ADHD, so that you can take that information and give it to your behavior analyst and say, these are the areas we need to work on. Now, again, most behavior analysts won't even know really how to work on those areas, but that's why we made skills.
Right. I was just going to say the lessons are in skills.
The lessons are in skills.
And your ABA provider can use skills.
Absolutely.
They can subscribe to skills, and
if they don't want to, you can.
Right.
And just print out those specific lessons in those areas. I mean, there's specific areas called attention, and so you can look at those and get those areas.
Amazing. I have 2 more questions I want to get to.
Sure.
We have 4 minutes. Hello, my son is doing really well in his regular ed first grade classroom so far. Yay. Just a couple of things I noticed. He is the last to line up, the last to carpet, and the last to get his materials out. How can we speed that up? Also, he likes to call attention to himself with loud sneezes and falling out of his chair. Can we replace them? And thank you very much. I'm a big fan. Your son sounds a lot like my son was in first grade.
That's awesome.
Anything to get a laugh.
So you know, both of those are not, because we're so limited on time, I'll have to respond pretty quickly. But speeding up something time-wise is very easy to do. So you just get a baseline. So let's say you measure the behavior 5 times and you get the average. Okay, so every day when he has to come to the circle, you measure the amount of time that it, and one behavior at a time, please. So the amount of time it takes for him to go and sit at the circle.
Right.
And you get the average, and that's your baseline. And then what you do is you very specifically make sure he understands that if he does it in 5 seconds less, you show him. You'll say, you did this, that was great, that was in 25 seconds, great, now we're gonna do 20. If you do it in 20, you're gonna get this reward.
Yeah.
And then you do that for a week, and you keep it at 20, and then you go to 15 and 10 and get it to the point where other children are, and then you're done. And now keep in mind, you're reinforcing him every time for the shorter segment of time. Now what you have to do is you have to reduce your reinforcement so that it maintains without you reinforcing every single time. So now you reinforce every second time, every third time, you rotate gradually so he never knows when there's a reinforcer coming, and then you're done. So that's kind of a process of shaping and then reducing your reinforcer and fading out. So that's what you need to do for that. Once you kind of, if you're dealing with that, you can't deal with the laughing and all that at the same time, although the dropping himself or all that sort of stuff might be the reason that he's slower. And so if you just speed up the pace, those things might automatically go away. But having said that, it probably what's maintaining it is other kids laughing. And I don't know your circumstances and your control with the classroom or with the teacher, but you may want to have a conversation about that with the teacher and say, I need you to control this so that other kids don't laugh.
Yeah.
But why don't you write back into us after you've dealt with the shortening of the period of time that it takes him to go from one activity to another, and then we'll address the sort of clown behavior next.
The stand-up comedian in the making. Okay, this last question came to us from our good friend Ricardo in the Cayman Islands.
Oh, right, great.
So he said, I'm glad to be able to tune into your program again this morning that they were filming earlier. We're working with Ricardo to figure out a way that we can, he's doing something very similar to what we're doing here in the Cayman Islands, and so we're trying to figure out how to work together. So he says, how can we go about getting information on insurance documents that we can submit to our insurance advocacy group to work on getting kids with autism to be covered by insurance companies in the Cayman Islands?
So our friends in South Africa did this, and we put together a very comprehensive package for them. So Ricardo, I would refer you to my dear friend and colleague here, Julie, who works in our public policy. She runs our public policy department. But instead of announcing her information online,
I'll email
Shannon
Ricardo.
will give you her information, and I'm pretty sure Julie will be able to send you the documents that we were able to send to South Africa when they were trying to do the same thing. We do have quite a bit of information and stuff that we've put together for insurance and why it's important that these interventions be covered.
Okay, great. And I just want to say, full circle moment. We showed you that video of Brett Myler, that the person, when you guys call the Center for Autism and
That's
Related
right, that's
Disorders
right.
to deal with insurance here in the United States, the person who's the head of that department is his lovely mother, Bryce Myler.
That's right.
That is how you found her, because you treated and recovered her son.
That's right.
And you saw that insurance was coming, and she's an insurance expert. It wasn't like she was always working at CARD, but you'd already recovered her kid, and you said, join us, we're going to need you.
Literally, God brought Bryce back to, I mean, Bryce stayed in touch with me, of course, after Brett had finished, and every single year she would bring CARD a giant box of chocolates, which we always looked forward to that. But then I think it was right around the time that there was some talk of insurance coming, that Bryce came and said, you know, what are you guys doing? And we're like, oh my gosh, can you come please join us? Because we really need your expertise. She had worked in the field already for 25 years before that.
That's why I always say, you know, when you're working with CARD, you know, they're going to help you to figure out what your insurance covers. And some families feel like, well, but are they going to, you know, fight for me? And are they, because my insurance companies have big boxing gloves that they wear, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you want to know that you have somebody with the same size or larger boxing gloves. And I always go, you have Bryce on your side.
Absolutely.
And there's nobody who gets it more than Bryce.
Right.
So that's an amazing thing. Anyway, so full circle moment on that. All right, we didn't get to enough questions because that's always the case, but it was a thrill to have you here.
Pleasure.
Thank you for
very
touching
much.
down in Los Angeles to be with us
Thank
today.
you, and I will be here next week.
All right, that's fabulous. And we'll get some more questions in. We're going to take a break now and go to the A word. I also want to let you know that tomorrow we are going to debut the final episode of this version of the A word. We did some filming with Jack Riley and his family a couple of months ago, and Kelby has been working very hard on this, and we're going to debut that tomorrow. But for now, take a look at Jack Riley while he's in the middle of his early intensive behavioral intervention. When we come back, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is going to join me for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And we're going to rock the spectrum in this hour, because Dina Kimmel from We Rock the Spectrum is going to be with us with the newest owner of a We Rock the Spectrum. We're going to talk about these really incredible gyms and how they're popping up all over the country and why you might want to visit one of them. So that'll be in Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. But first, here is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Hi, Jessica's daddy. That's right. Who's this? Who's this? Bobby. And who's that? Daddy.
Who's that?
Over there. Who's that?
And I totally think he's just aware of a lot of things now. People's names.
How's the behavior team going with the inflexibilities?
He's still a big control guy. He still wants it the way he wants it.
In sessions, he was very, he'd get very upset,
And he gets upset fast, like for reasons that didn't used to upset him. He gets upset fast, and then once he's upset, everything upsets him.
Were they really long?
But it was a good half hour, the whole tantrum, which is long for him. Really long. And he would just get so upset.
yeah, everyone tells us, you know, it's not unexpected. He's 3 and blah, 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 but
So we get it, we know it.
still it's harsh. Yeah, he's 3, but he's our 3-year-old.
Tell me a vehicle. Good job. Tell me another vehicle. Airplane is a vehicle. Yay. Okay, 2 more. Okay. Tell me a food. Pancake is a food.
Yeah.
Tell me another food. Tell me another one. Cereal bar is a food.
Yeah.
But he said zebra. Hey, Jack Riley. Yes. Good job. Tell me an animal.
What's that?
Tell me one more time. What's the animal?
Rhinoceros.
Rhinoceros.
Oh, okay, it's an animal. Tell me another animal. I know. Tell me another one. Oh, here are your shoes. What animal is that? Froggy is a what?
No. Frog is a...
Arrow.
Good. So tell me another animal.
Rhinoceros is an animal.
Rhinoceros is an animal, and tell me another one.
More pancake.
No, look at me. No. No, look at me.
Lion is an animal.
There you go. Thank you. Pancakes are not animals, silly.
There's a clue from it.
More pancake.
Yeah, and I don't mind if he looks around to like get clues, get hints. That's totally fine. Yes, I've been running sessions a little bit more like that lately, just because his behaviors have been really high. Just like if we're jumping on the bed or dancing, I'll stop for a minute and ask him like 3 or 4 questions, and then we'll just keep dancing or whatever we're doing. Let me probe through some stuff real quick.
What are you going to be probing?
Actions. So I just want to see if he already knows it, then I won't even bother introducing it. Give me kissing. Oh, good. What are the kids doing?
He's kissing.
Oh, they're kissing. Can you show me kissing? Oh, good job. Give me cleaning. Okay, good. What's the girl doing?
She's cleaning.
She's cleaning. Good job.
Water.
Okay, one more. Can I have it? One more. Give me crying. What's the baby doing?
He's baby.
What's she doing? What's the baby doing?
She's baby.
She's wah-wah. She's crying.
She's crying.
Oh, okay. Maybe we'll do crying.
He's kissing.
He's kissing. What about this one? What's she doing there?
She's cooking.
Oh, she's cooking. Okay. And what's this one? What's she doing?
He's crying.
Oh, okay. So basically, he knows all of them. All right, cool. All right. What are they doing?
He's dirty.
They're what?
There's cooking.
Oh, they're cooking. Good job.
What's that cooking? What's that cooking?
Mom is cooking?
What's that cooking?
Lots of cooking? Oh, okay, cool. All right, all done. Thank you.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon. I got no Nancy at the moment. Nancy's going to be here in a couple of minutes. Because we're autism parents, you know, stuff happens. And you know what stuff I'm talking about. So she had to run up to Wyatt's school for just a minute, and she'll be here very soon. She texted and said, I just got to go do this and I will be there. And you know me, I respect that. So she asked if I would start in the news without her. And, you know, I'm thrilled to do that. There's a plethora of news today, and we chose a couple of different things. Want to remind you that in just a little while, our very special guests, we have Julie Johns and Dina Kimmel from We Rock the Spectrum. Dina's been on the show before, an amazing autism mom who's just tearing it up and making these really amazing opportunities for both parents and for kids who are on the spectrum, creating gyms that are really great for our kids. But it's also an opportunity for parents who are looking for a way to make a living and have a place for their kids. There are franchises available. We're going to talk about all that coming up a little bit later on. But first, wanted to talk a little bit about some stories in the news. This week, in fact, it was yesterday in the New York Times, an article, and this is by Aaron Carroll, who is a professor of pediatrics at the Indiana University School of Medicine. You can find him. He blogs regularly on health research on a site, and health research policies on the Incidental Economist. You can read his stuff, but he has a piece up in the New York Times online today that says why there's a disagreement over screening every child for autism. You know that we covered the story about the United States Preventative Services Task Force that recently released its for review its new policy on autism, and they felt that they could not unilaterally recommend that children be screened for autism. I know, sharp intake of breath, right? What were they thinking? Aaron Carroll reported on this and said, It's a great article. You should read it. But noted that the American Academy of Pediatrics disagrees with the task force. And by the way, I still think there are a couple of days that you can comment. That was on our Facebook. The American Academy, I can't speak today, of Pediatrics recommends that all children be screened at 18 and 24 months of age. So Aaron Carroll said, look, let's take a look at David Sackett's classic handbook on evidence-based medicine. And in that book, he says that there are 4 criteria that decide whether or not we should be doing something or not. So number 1, the first criteria is the condition prevalent and severe enough to warrant screening? And he talks exactly about the fact that he's a little bit of a doubter about the incidence growing as much as it is, but he says still, you cannot argue that there is enough prevalence that we should be screening. So it satisfies number 1. Number 2, do we have a cost-effective means to screen the general population? And he talks about the screening methods that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that are used to screen not test for autism, screen. And it is a simple 11-question checklist that takes a couple of minutes, and there's really no cost, maybe 2 minutes. And so he says, absolutely, it qualifies for that. Number 3, does early diagnosis make a difference? That is, do we have treatments available that are more successful when patients are diagnosed early? And he says, it doesn't matter. There are people who criticize, but the science is all there. Clearly, there's not a single person that is not on the same side of this fence that early diagnosis has a better outcome. So clearly it qualifies for that. And number 4, will an early diagnosis motivate people to use information gained from the screening? And he said that the least amount of data is there on that one, but there are enough children that have gotten great help because they got screened that it warrants it, that it meets this qualification. So why on earth would the task force be at all concerned and say that it wasn't necessary? And it all comes down to the almighty dollar. I encourage you to read this article. It's in the New York Times today. He says that the task force is trying to demand a high level of evidence before recommending a screening test be performed universally. And they're saying, but even if we don't recommend it, that doesn't mean that we're saying that people shouldn't do it, right? Here's the big but in the situation, and you know what I mean by that. But without the stamp of approval from this group, the task force, payment for screening is not mandated by the Affordable Care Act, which means that people won't be able to afford it. A pediatrician won't be able to do it because they're not getting paid for it. Even that 2-minute little thing, they won't get paid for it. So people aren't going to get it done. So it's unconscionable. Again, this article is written by Aaron Carroll in the New York Times. I encourage you to read it, understand it, and to speak out against the U.S. Prevention Task Force and their really ridiculous idea that we shouldn't be screening all children for autism. Seriously. Another really interesting article that was in reset.me that came out today. Incendiary title, could a common painkiller cause brain inflammation and even autism in children? And the subtitle is, what if it's acetaminophen, not vaccines? Researchers tie America's most popular painkiller to brain inflammation and autism. Now, this is a subject that we've talked about before, and this is written by a doctor, Jennifer Margulis, and it's a very long article. I want to encourage you to read the entire thing at reset.me, but talks about the vast array of studies that show that acetaminophen has an effect on adults and is considered something we now know that it can cause liver damage in adults. And that there was a recent report, a Cochrane report, and Cochrane is known for being across the board reliable, but I'm sorry, excuse me, the Cochrane report was from 13 years ago. It's not so recent, saying that acetaminophen is safe for babies. But this article tears that apart into tiny little pieces and says, here's what wasn't looked at, here's what we know now, here's what the studies have shown. More and more studies are challenging this. I really want to encourage you, across the board, they talk about what it means when we give acetaminophen to a small child for a fever. If we are not giving acetaminophen, if we're giving Motrin, it discusses all of that about what do you do if your child is running a fever. And it talks about why they're looking so closely at acetaminophen right now to see what it could be doing to the brain that would in fact leave somebody more likely to have an autism diagnosis. And in the end of the article, it gives very specific recommendations, because I know a lot of us think, well, if I don't give this, what do I do when my child is sick? What do I put in place? What I love about this article more than anything else is that it does not vilify acetaminophen and say don't ever give it. That is not what this article says. It says this is something that we only want to give when the benefits outweigh what the negatives are, and it details the negatives for you in a way that leaves no question whatsoever, especially in women who are pregnant, that you should seriously be avoiding it at almost all costs, and in small children, but especially right before giving a vaccine. Again, this is by Jennifer Margolis. She is a doctor, and you can find it at ResetMe, RESET.me. All right, we're going to take a break. I hear that Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is in the house, and we're going to bring her in here and get going with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We'll be right back after these messages. Mid-swing on this wonderful day, this wonderful walk with Mr. Matt Asner. Talk to us about today's walk. Do we have any facts, figures, numbers, or just pure emotion?
Just pure emotion. I'm about to get the numbers. We'll see what it is. Okay. I think it's probably close to 1.6, probably. That's my feeling. But it's incredible. We had 55,000 people plus here today, and you know, I honestly, I've been here 7 years. It gets better and better and better. So.
And really what you fostered here today is hope. I know that's your favorite four-letter word.
Where are we without hope?
Where are we?
Really, I mean, seriously, where are we without hope? Hope is everything. Hope is eternal.
This is a pretty big event. Every year I love it. What does this event mean to you?
Well, I just think it's great that you see so many people coming out to support, autism.
So we're here with Max Burkholder. There's a whole community of people that are going to love you no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, and that's the autism community. Are you okay with this? Is this a good thing?
I'm pretty okay with it. This seems to be a pretty happy, supportive community.
Well, what did you learn about autism through portraying this wonderful character?
Sort of the individuality of it, like with autism spectrum disorders, a tendency is to sort of generalize everybody with sort of the same degree of affliction as sort of exactly the same, and very generalize them a lot. But something I found while just talking to everybody, and that I tried to put into the characters, just the sense of individuality that all of them have, everybody has. And so at a certain point it became not really even portraying autism, it just sort of became portraying the character.
I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for what you do.
That's very sweet.
To bring awareness and to raise money. That's a tremendous, tremendous legacy. But as a dad, you've got other things that you're doing as well.
Yeah.
I want to know, as a family, if you have any advice, what's been something that's been helpful to you personally?
Get your autistic kids out in the community. I mean, my son's got a guide dog, so he goes to a lot of cool places. He surfs, he skis, does gymnastics. He's actually trying Hebrew school. I'm not quite sure if he knows what's happening there. But he does all kinds of cool things, and he has a lot of friends. Right now, most of his friends are the adults who take care of him. And over time, hopefully he'll have more friends who are his age, and you'll see him walking around, and people won't be nervous around him. The dog's been very helpful with that. It's like the dog is like the most infectious thing in the world. Like everybody wants to be near the dog, and he sees that, and he gets some of that affection laid onto him. So as a family, you know, we're just there to support Tyler and make him happy.
Welcome. Look who I found.
Hi, I was wandering around the halls. Somebody give me a show.
I shared with them that you had to go, that we got a message from you that you were going to be a little late because you had to be an autism mom.
Right.
You needed
I had
to go
to race
take care
over
of
to
some
school
stuff.
and take him something he forgot and deal with the very unhelpful front office.
Can we say?
At Lindero Middle School. Yeah.
Well, I just, this, a really well-meaning, you said, probably somebody who was in her early 30s person.
She wasn't really well-meaning. She said to me, we can't do this because he left his backpack one day, and this was a binder he probably didn't need, but me being type A and wanting him to have everything perfect, raced over to get it to him on the way here and realized he had left it. And she said, from now on, it disrupts the class. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? You don't give me his aide's number. I can't, there's nobody I can call. So what am I supposed to do? She goes, well, just remember everything from now on.
And I said I want to go over there or call over there and talk to her and go, hi. I know that Nancy will never tell you this, but, Nancy is dealing with her son being on the autism spectrum, and her husband is going through chemo right now.
And he couldn't get out of bed this morning.
And so, she has other things that are going on, and it's going to be going on for a little while, and you're going to be more kind and considerate.
Possibly,
and
but
you're
possibly not. Possibly attitude
No, see,
is
I would
what
tell her that that's what she's going to do. Because, sometimes people are in their own little bubble and going, well, this is inconvenient for me. And it's not the best possible circumstance. Well, duh, you know that, but it's like
I can't believe my kid's the only kid.
He's not.
That's forgotten 2 things this year.
No, he's not the only one. But she, in her bubble, it's like, well, this is inconvenient for me and it's inconvenient for the kids. Okay. All right, but grab a whoopee and get over it. Like we don't get to have our convenient day either. That's the thing that we always say in my family, that we've always had little, like your blanket or your pillow or the thing that comforts you. And so we say, get it, get your binky.
Get your binky,
get
and it's
over
okay.
it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not the worst thing that's going to happen to you today, or maybe it is, and then I envy you.
Right.
Okay, so let's get into the news.
So we stopped in the middle of the news.
I was on a rant last week about the mom that got angry at me for passing her to go in the quick lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just need to get you a T-shirt that says, people need to cut me a little slack right now.
Or you may cause physical harm by me at some point, or be given a lecture by me, which you don't. As you say, Nancy's going to wave her bony finger at you.
Finger.
Okay,
and
so
see, you know what I say when I do it? I say I waved my fat finger.
And you say my bony.
So
finger.
I say your bony finger and my fat finger. So.
All right, so you found this article, which I haven't really digested the whole thing yet, but it's by Dr. Bob Sears, who we love, because he seems to be the voice of reason in the vaccine debate, mess, controversy, everything.
And many people have been freaking out here in the state of California about what do I do, this new mandate, and what is it going to mean? Because it went through some very crazy last-minute alterations. Mm-hmm. And, I had shared on the first day that I called Senator Dr. Pan's office and said, okay, does it have this? Does it have that? What does this mean? But we're, more information keeps shaking down.
And how helpful was his office?
They were actually very helpful.
Were they?
They were like, why are you asking this? Because they were busy having a party, and yet...
Oh, they were having a party celebrating?
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Come on, because that's a win for them, right?
Okay.
He seemed really happy. He's like, oh.
And that big pharma money that he gets is going to come in, even more of it.
But in any case, Dr. Sears had actually posted this on his Facebook site. And if you aren't on his Facebook site, I really want to encourage you be there because he writes some pretty interesting articles.
Yeah.
And I want to say, and I don't think it needs to be said, but I like Dr. Bob Sears, but I don't necessarily agree with everything that Dr. Bob Sears says.
No.
Like I don't necessarily agree with everything that anybody ever says, right?
Exactly.
So I don't want it to be, about that. But he posts some really interesting things, and as a pediatrician in this field, he has some very interesting things to say. So he had posted this before, and somehow it mysteriously disappeared from his Facebook.
He said conspiracy doubtful.
Right, but it had disappeared. So he posted it again today, and because I'm a parent in the state of California, I took and printed it off.
Okay.
So that if it disappears again, because it's a really great guideline about what our choices are at this moment in time, and I think everybody's entitled to that.
So let's get into some of what he has to say.
Yeah.
He says that, number one, the law won't apply to the majority of people currently involved in this fight yet. Most will continue in school as is for many years, unless you leave now in protest. Two, the law allows for some families to continue to opt out of vaccines forever. So he says
there are lots of loopholes.
Right. Realize that this bill won't go into effect until the 2016-2017 school year. So there's nothing you need to do this year except submit a personal belief exemption form. That's it. Oh, and try to get every legislator who voted yes to lose his or her next election. And join every protested meeting you can to make your voices heard. But so here's what else you need to know.
And
Shannon,
he goes, it's a very long article, but it's because it's thorough.
Yes.
But he goes through to say, here are what your options are. And these are without judgment. He says, many of you will be grandfathered in so that you won't have to do anything this year, next year, or possibly ever, or possibly not for 5 or 6 years.
Right.
So you need to look at where your child is in this process. If your child has not yet started, there's 3 checkpoints. There's a kindergarten, there's a checkpoint that you need to be vaccinated by or take other measures. There's a checkpoint when you start 1st grade, so there's 2 back-to-back there. Then there's another checkpoint at 7th grade. If your child, and that's your child going into 7th grade, going into kindergarten, or going into 1st grade in the 2016-2017 year. If you don't have a child going into one of those grades in those years, you really don't have to sweat anything right now. If you have your personal exemption on file, you don't have to change anything. If you do have a child who's going into one of those grades, then at that point you need to make some other decisions. So it's like a decision tree that he gives you, and he says, one choice that you have is to get a letter from a doctor saying that you are going to do them on your schedule, not theirs, and that's permissible. And he talks about which ones are available and which ones you may want to consider doing. And he goes through a whole host of different things, giving parents informed choices about what you may or may not do. And if you have a child who has immune issues, what kind of paper that you can get so that you get exempt forever. If it's an issue for you at all, this is the article to read. And it's available on his website. We really want to encourage you.
We won't try and get through all of this because
no.
it's quite a bit.
But
Yeah,
it goes through medical exemptions, and then when you get to the very end of the article, and I do think this is worth, and you see how many pages I'm turning, I do think it's worth printing off to know. So he goes through, I don't know if you can see on my sheet, and he lists, okay, here are the vaccinations that are required for daycare. By the way, he also addresses issues about if you're homeschooling, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about people thinking that if they homeschool that they have to follow the rules. That is not the case, and he talks about that. But he goes through 3 or 4 pages here of saying, here are what the vaccinations are that are actually required. So really helpful. We want to thank Dr. Bob Sears for giving us all that information.
He also says if your child has an IEP, don't do anything. Stay in school. Never let that IEP go. Your child can remain unvaccinated.
Because they're exempted. That is exactly how I read it, that they are exempted because of their IEP. So in any case, check that out. We've got couple of amazing guests that are going to be with us. I haven't met Julie Johns yet, but she's one of the newest owners of a We Rock the Spectrum. And Dina Kimmel is with us. And
founder.
We adore Dina Kimmel, an awesome autism mom who's, you know how we always talk about autism moms. These are the people that if you got stuck in an alley that you'd want to be in a knife fight with, trust me, you'd want to have Dina with you. right? She's that kind of mom,
Yeah.
get it done kind of mom. So Dina is awesome. And they're going to be with us talking about this newest We Rock the Spectrum here and some of the new ones that have opened. We have some questions that you guys have sent in about where another one might open. And maybe it's something that you want to look at if you're looking for a career change and want something that's conducive to having a child on the autism spectrum, and you want to be able to be helpful and bring in some money to keep the roof over the head, you might want to We Rock the Spectrum franchise.
Okay.
So all of that when we come back. Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hey, welcome back to Autism Live. We heard you. Everybody wants
macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, but we're gonna make it allergy free. But here's what's the crazy part of this macaroni and cheese. It's actually healthy.
And it tastes good.
Yeah, it tastes really good.
That's the most important part.
So we're gonna start, we got our water boiling. There's so many variations on the pasta. We're using today a corn pasta. We can verify with the manufacturer that we have a GMO-free product. So let's go ahead and put that in there.
Ooh,
and if you don't mind, stir that up for me, my friend.
Now it's sticking a little bit to the bottom.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
We maybe add a little more high heat oil and spread that around again. One thing you gotta know about gluten-free pasta, if you overcook this, it becomes mush. Let's move this guy over to the other burner so you can see what I'm doing. And now we're gonna start with the old macaroni and cheese sauce. What's great is there's a lot of choices for, you know, different soups. And the way that I look at soups, and again, please follow the recipe on your screen right now. I don't like to measure very often. But what I like to use is a creamy butternut squash soup. So this soup is great because it adds a lot of flavor to the dish, but also gives people another serving of vegetables. With kids, we don't want to over season. Maybe with the adults, we can season some for the kids first, pull it out, serve them, and then add a little more, you know, garlic powder or onion powder or other types of things into your dish. So the next most important thing on this recipe is we're gonna add in a thickener and the faux cheese. Now some people like their sauce really thick, so you just add in more cornstarch or more arrowroot, so that's not a big deal. How's that doing? You think it's ready?
I think it's done.
Okay, so why don't we switch? I'll take that, you do that.
Okay.
And I'm going to strain this bad boy here. Here, let me turn that off.
Okay.
Or we're gonna cause trouble again.
Trouble in Lisa's kitchen.
Yeah, no.
That's another show.
Don't, yeah, right? So I'm gonna go ahead, get this all strained. It's a good consistency. So I'm gonna check to make sure our pasta is cooked. So really you just wanna make sure, just like any pasta, it's a little bit squeezy, a little bit. Nice. Dude, good job. We're good.
Looks yummy.
So even though the cheese is not totally melted, it's okay, don't panic. What's important is that you're gonna love this recipe once you eat it. What I enjoy most about this recipe is that it smells good, but this stuff is amazing. So if you don't mind, I'm going to serve you some up, and you can maybe blow a little bit on it so you don't burn your mouth. Sorry, I'm once a mom, always a mom.
Just like wait till I can.
I know, right?
God, I can't wait. I'm excited.
So I'm going to give a shot of this too, but
oh my gosh, that is so good.
This is the ultimate comfort food. So
oh, it's so
isn't
good.
it good?
And I'm not just saying that. It is really good. It literally tastes like something our kids would really like, and that sweetness is really, really, really good.
So the bonus for us is that when we're serving this to our kids, they're actually getting a full serving of vegetables in this. So instead of just eating a bunch of carbs and worthless calories, you're actually getting some good stuff in this. And we'll be back next time. I hope you join us again here on Autism Live. We're really loving the feedback, and if you have additional feedback, here's how you get it to us. You can send it to us via email at autismlive@gmail.com. On Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive. And also there's thousands of recipes waiting for you to discover them with pictures and different things on the Taka website. So you can hit Taka on the web, takanow.org, and we'll be back. Hopefully we'll get to do this again.
I had so much fun.
Maybe we'll have a little wine, but you got to join us next time. We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Bye, guys. We're going to keep eating.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
It's every parent's desire for their child to have a great start in life. Yet there is a condition affecting more children's lives than pediatric cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Autism strikes 1 in every 150 children.
Today, 1 in 110 kids in the U.S. will be diagnosed with autism. That is a huge jump from 30 years ago when it was 1 in 30,000.
Startling new report finds the number of children with autism is skyrocketing. The Centers for Disease Control estimates 1 in 68 children has a form of autism. Now that's a 30% increase in just 2 years.
Well, a lot of the children and all the accomplishments over the last 20 years, I'm thrilled.
I think what kept me was the feeling that, you know, I would have a parent come to my office late at night at UCLA and just fall apart. And this is a long time ago, and there were much less back then in terms of services and knowledge and so on. And I would just sit with the family and the parents and walk them through and try to take away some of their fears, you know. And at that point I realized, I think the thing that's actually most important to me is that process. I mean, thank God that I've been very, very lucky and blessed to have so many incredible clinicians join me along the way and just develop CARD in such an amazing, magnificent way. That I could, you know, for me it was more really about how can I help the families? What can I do for the moms, the dads, you know? It is just, and I feel like, you know, there's no way I would ever really know because I haven't had my own child go through this, but I've experienced it with people a lot of times.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm in 1st grade all by myself. My teachers are so fabulous. I like to read books. I like to go to my friends' birthday parties. I like to invite my friends to my birthday parties. I once had a sleepover with a friend. I like to have play dates with my friend. I'm the best reader in my class. I like to go to the library. I like to read different series of books. And here's how I learned to do all these things. By my card friends and Dr. Grandpichet. Thank you, card friends and Dr. Grandpichet.
What do you think about ABA treatment?
ABA is the one that's documented, but I think that's what I think is important with little kids, the intensity. If this kid's 2, 3, and 4 years old, he needs 20 or 30 hours a week of intensive early intervention, working one-to-one with an effective teacher. And an effective teacher knows kind of how just hard to push, because you've got to stretch these kids. If you don't stretch them somewhere, they don't advance. You push them on them too hard, they go into sensory shutdown. The worst thing you could do with an autistic 2-year-old is to do nothing with them and just let them sit there rocking. And when I was very young at 2.5, ABA type things were used on me, but it wasn't called ABA in that day. You know, my teacher would hold up a cup and she'd speak slowly. You gotta speak slowly to these kids because there's auditory processing problems. She'd say cup, and then I'd say cup, and the teacher would praise me. You know, that's very similar to ABA. You know, ABA in its you know, original form is a little kids program. The whole idea is you're trying to get language jump-started. And I like the more flexible kinds of ABA. You've got different levels of kids. Once, I mean, I had ABA type stuff when I was young, but then after I pulled out of it, I didn't have to go through elaborate things of getting ready for school. I still have this habit now today. I lay my clothes out the night before that I'm going to wear, so when I'm sleepy I can just get them on. And then you have other individuals where they've got to do very structured, you know, breaking down the task analysis. This is where after you get out of the little kids and you get them talking, they kind of diverge into different levels of functioning. And a type of ABA program that'd be suitable for a very severe kid would not be something you'd want to do with a mild Asperger kid, because you're going to bore them to death and make them hate school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Welcome back. We're having such a good time. It's a party here.
autism moms catching up, chatting.
And that's
comparing notes.
exactly what you see before
Yeah,
you, a panel
right.
of 4 autism moms sitting around having a great conversation
Having a
about
chick fest.
how to make a difference. But how to make a difference, which is always something that Nancy and I like to talk about here. So first of all, we have to introduce you guys. A lot of you who watch the show, of course, you know Dina Kimmel, and we adore you. You're one of our favorite guests, truly. I don't know if you got to hear what I said about you before, about how I always say with autism moms, if you're ever stuck in an alley and you're in a knife fight, you want to be with an autism mom, right? But you're the autism mom I would want to take into the, because Dina gets stuff done. And she's that kind of proactive mom, and you'll hear why in a second. And Julie Johns is with us too. And I had mentioned to them before that you are the newest owner, or one of the newest owners
Yes.
of We Rock the Spectrum, and we're going to talk about a fundraiser that you have going for your new We Rock the Spectrum. But I didn't realize that these two ladies had never met before.
No.
So you are
So
all
we're like
witnessing
big-
history
Yes,
right here.
I know.
Because
it's such a fantastic, we love, our family loves We Rock the Spectrum. We had Wyatt's last birthday there, and Shannon had recommended it. It
Yeah.
was just fantastic.
it was. My
It really
son
was.
went
Yeah.
to the party.
Yeah,
And
it was
we
fantastic.
bought placemats there that we still use on the table because they're the math placemats.
I love
that
it.
we-
Yes, yes. They're awesome. Melissa and Doug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Melissa and Doug, yes.
So I want to just go back a little bit
Yeah.
with Dina, and let's talk about how this started, the creation of We Rock the Spectrum Kids Gyms. How did this come about?
Wow. Well, it's so funny we were talking about it, Julie and I, out there, because our sons are the exact same age, 8 years old, and they were my first clients at my WeRock. So it started back in 2009 when my son Gabriel was diagnosed with autism. And
So he was what age at that time?
he was 20 months.
Okay.
He was 20 months, and my journey began, and it was tough. He was diagnosed moderate to severe.
Right.
So no sleep, was having a newborn for
Yes.
really up to 3.5 years.
Yes.
And per his OT suggestion, she said, you know what? He needs a sensory diet really multiple hours per day. Okay, well, all of our kids do. Okay,
Yeah.
so, but what can the average, it's $150 an hour.
Yeah.
What the state provides us is maybe once a week. Well, my kid needed every day.
Okay.
So I literally moved everything out of my bedroom and made an OT room, sensory room inside my home. And it was within 6 months. I mean, my daughter and son never interacted. It was like the lights were
Your
on and no
daughter's
one was
a little
home.
bit older.
My daughter's a little bit older, but Gabriel just didn't react to her. He didn't know how.
Right.
So all of a sudden, we got him on this equipment every day, and his sister was playing on it, and bam, within 6 months, all of a sudden, the language exploded. The eye contact happened, and we were witnessing a miracle before our eyes. And after about, I'd say 6 months to a year, I said to my husband, I go, there's got to be other families out there who need this, like us. I said, we have to pay this forward. They have to have this.
Not every
because
family can put a gym in their home.
put a gym in their home, or like I said, afford the $150 an hour,
Yeah.
for the OT. Who can do
expensive.
that?
Right.
Exactly. I mean, 1 hour a day is great, but Gabriel needed to be on it several hours every day. So we opened up our first gym, and that was in Tarzana. And actually, we're having our 5-year anniversary of our brand.
Congratulations.
So excited. Thank you.
And what you have accomplished in 5 years is amazing, Dina.
Thank you. Thank you so
Absolutely
much.
amazing. And in fact, recently, you have gotten a lot of coverage. You've had many different We Rock the Spectrums open. I think the first time we did a show together, I want to say that you had 14. Does that sound about right?
No, that was the last time I was on.
Was that the last time you were on? Okay, 14. So
Yes.
when the first time we had you on the show, how many did
I had 7.
7. And then it went to 14, so you doubled. Now how many are
31.
there? 31, and that's about to double again.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's
because it's a great idea.
Thank you.
It's a great, great idea,
It's
and
a
you've
need.
seen how much people need it in this recent.
Unbelievable.
You've had an onslaught of publicity for people who didn't see it. You've been covered by the Huffington Post. You've been covered on CBS. I mean, you've gotten a great deal of coverage. You had a new We Rock the Spectrum open in upstate New York in the Buffalo area. We've had viewers
Wow.
writing in to us here on the show who have watched the show for a long
I
time.
love
and
it.
said,
Great.
and said, okay, but you have to ask her, when are we getting one closer to us? You understood what that meant. But
South Towns versus North Towns.
And
which
you have
is
great news for them.
One's opening in North Towns too. Well, the same owner, the Sills, who own Buffalo and South Towns, are going to be opening also in the
Okay.
North Towns as well. It's
Wonderful.
like us here in LA. No one wants to drive, 20 minutes, let alone if you have a child on the spectrum and they can't stand, being in the car. So, and they're in the snow. It's cold. We just got back
They
from
don't have
there
a lot
2
of-
weeks ago.
They don't have a lot of areas to exercise and have.
Especially in the winter when you need to get the kids'
Right.
yayas out, you need a place
Exactly.
to go.
Right.
And you have a really interesting model. If somebody wants to become a member of the gym, explain what that is.
To own a gym or to come in and...
To come in, because then we're going to talk about owning a gym. But if
Mhm.
you want your child to come, what are the choices that they have? Can they come in and pay for one visit? Can they pay to have unlimited visits? Tell them what they can do.
That's what's nice. So, everything feels overwhelming, as you know, when you're a newly, child, you have a child who's newly diagnosed with autism or sensory processing disorder, or Down syndrome. The gym caters to all needs of children, neurotypical as well. That's our vision, inclusion, as you know. But for me, I couldn't walk into a place and go, okay, here's $175 for a month membership. No, we let people just pay one time at $12, or then we, of course, always have discounts like the 5 for 50s, the 3 for 30s, and then we have our monthly memberships because we have people who are in there every day because their kiddos need it every day.
Really incredible. So, for like when you think about this, how much you would have loved this when Wyatt was littler.
Yeah.
Being able to pay a monthly membership and then go unlimited every single day
I
and
would have
have a
loved that.
place to
I would
go.
have absolutely
and
loved that.
have them run and get their yayas out on great equipment. Truly amazing things can happen as a result of that. So people need to check out where We Rock the Spectrum is near them. What's the website?
To see the location page, it's www.werockthespectrum.com.
Okay. I think we should take a break.
And then
we're going to come back and talk with Julie about what she has going
You're
on.
up to with Re-Rock the Spectrum, some
Yes.
exciting plans.
Very exciting, and I think other parents at home might be interested for themselves to know what the journey is like if you want to open your own We Rock the Spectrum gym.
Love it.
So back after these messages.
So we're going to do down dog next. So with down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, right? So for me, what I'm going to do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat, and then I'm going to tuck my toes, and then my head is also going to drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay. And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape. Or V. Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Then it's a U.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet. But also sometimes what feels really good is going down on your forearms like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor. You still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes. But rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. Okay. So, yep. You're going to do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Or are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good. Good.
Welcome back.
Yeah, we're having a great time hearing about We Rock the Spectrum Kids Gym. We are here with Dina and Julie learning about, you founded it, and it's just been growing by leaps and bounds. Thank goodness. It's really filling a need in our community. And Julie, let's hear a little bit about you're opening a franchise and you're doing some fundraising. Tell us about your big plans here.
Well, we've been fundraising now since the past 2 months to open up Los Angeles. We Rock. There isn't any services in Los Angeles. They're mostly all in the Valley and in different states and so what. And I wanted to open up a kids gym in LA. So what I started is doing fundraising to My Brother Rocks the Spectrum Foundation. And I just been getting schools involved and getting all the parents involved and basically starting to fundraise right now. Just to the foundation.
And where in LA? So is this like downtown LA?
West LA. West LA.
West LA.
Yes.
Okay. All right. How many are in the LA area?
We have in LA County 8.
There are 8 in
But we're
LA
maxed
County.
out. They maxed us out.
Really?
Yeah.
But you are opening in all places around the country, right? How many states are you in?
Actually, I have very exciting news. We
Okay.
just signed the paperwork last week. We're going worldwide.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Oh, and you won't believe it, with the Huffington Post and doing the post that they did, now the UK. So now we have inquiries. I could start crying. I'm so excited.
We cry
The
on the show all the time. So
Oh my
yes.
goodness. Well, there's so many parents reaching out in the UK that are in such need. It's unbelievable. They have nothing.
Isn't that amazing?
So in all the UE, we're hitting it, you
That's
guys,
so
everywhere.
amazing.
Yeah.
What an exciting time that you're going to have. You know, you've been a rock star here in terms of, you know, people recognize you, they see you at the walk or something like that and recognize and go, this is so amazing. I've been at different events where you have a great booth always. Your booth is having one of the most fun times. Well, but I think your team is always having a lot of fun. We have had the pleasure to be next to you sometimes at a booth, and you know.
This year you guys was too.
Yeah, and you guys
You're
are
doing
having
the painting. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Fun, please. You
well,
guys
we like to be by fun people. I mean, come
Jacob
on.
loved it. He was painting on this lady, and he was going for it.
Yeah, that was my good friend Therese who allowed the kids. You know,
That's
we
awesome.
didn't intend for anybody to paint on anybody, but she eventually became the canvas, and we had a good time. But it was infectious because your folks were over there blowing up balloons and handing out all kinds of stuff. We had a good time. I think we had a good corner because there was a lot of fun happening.
It was a lot of fun.
But I think how amazing that now everywhere you travel, people are going to know you, and it's going to be a really cool
I'm
time.
very humbled by this. I want you to know, it's like I said, this is a dream. When people go, oh my gosh, I mean, sitting here is an honor. It's an honor to talk about We Rock and be here with you.
You definitely found a need and you fulfilled it. And Julia, you probably feel that way. I mean,
Oh my
what
God.
made you decide you wanted to get involved with this?
It's
tell a story about
amazing.
Vicky.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. So we started off at headquarters in Tarzana at CART.
Okay.
I had everyone saying, you know, throwing out services and all the lingo, and at the time, I was just finding out the name autism, trying to figure it out.
Right.
because
How old was your son at the
22
time?
months.
Okay.
22 months. I caught it, thank God. YouTube, thank YouTube. I caught the signs right away because he had a lot of sensory processing issues. He was a stemmer.
Okay.
Being a first-time mom, it was kind of hard to figure out.
Right.
I went to headquarters in CARD, and I knew that I needed to start at ABA, and I started, and thank CARD because he's came so far. And right across the street, it said, all I seen was spectrum, re-rock the spectrum. The word spectrum stood out like a sore thumb. And I'm just looking to confide in anyone for help, to ask questions, to learn. And I would watch you every day while I'll do laundry. I lived in Encino, and my eyes was all the information you gave me. I would cry and just, okay, remember, put it here. And walking into We Rock the Spectrum, my husband, Ricky, met Dina's husband, and he was actually putting the first nail for the swings. Right?
It's like the Mervin's commercial, open, when you guys
open.
opening Dina.
Yeah.
We were, oh my gosh, got chills.
And
We were under construction.
Your husband walked in.
Yes, and he brought me the very next day. He's like, you have to see this. This is amazing. And that's when I met Mama D.
Okay.
And I
then
just
you brought
felt-
Jacob over?
Yeah, Jacob
And
loved it.
he loved it?
I remember she told me, here's this swing, he's gonna love it. It's gonna calm him down. Jacob was jumping like Magic Johnson at the time. And his whole like persona changed. He was so calm, and he just was. I was like, wait a minute, is this my son?
Yeah.
And I said, I have to come here every day. So it was McRory's, it was Card, and it was We Rock the Spectrum.
Amazing.
So I moved, and I was gone for like a couple of years, and I came to the walk. That's
You
when I
witnessed
seen
it.
all you guys there. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. And I passed the finish line, and I said, well, it's the finish line, but it's not finished. It's every day.
Yes.
I was advocating for families because I never knew anything about autism. I wanted to give back to the community. So I was giving back by advocating and saying, hey, you have the right to ask for A, B, and C. And when it was the end of the walk, I said, well, you know, the month of April is gone, the walk is done, but like, and then I went on Facebook and I seen Dina's Facebook franchising. I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, how awesome to be a part of We Rock. So to have my We Rock and to have a mommy walk in and say, you know, hey, what is this? Help. I'm sure everyone knows about We Rock, but I want to give back because like I felt, oh my God, I felt such relief between Dina and Card and you. I want to give that back.
Right.
Because I was like in a lonely place. Jacob has no siblings, not a lot of family members. So everything I learned was on internet and through families and through We
And you
Rock.
felt privileged to learn it, and you wanted to pay it forward, which
Definitely.
is just amazing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and I've said this before to you, Dina, that if you had been doing it earlier, I would have been one of the parents lining up to have a We Rock the Spectrum.
Yeah, I
because,
might have been too.
You know, seriously, I mean,
Rocks
it's a great business plan. It's a way. I mean, you know, a lot of us have to change our jobs when our child is diagnosed, and we have to find a way to make it work for what our kid needs.
Exactly right.
And we want to give back.
Yes.
And so I think it's a great business model because it gives a place for your family to have a business,
That's exactly what we're doing.
right? And to
Yep.
put food on the table while you're helping your kid and helping other
Helping
families.
others, yeah, and
It's
stay, you know, I think as autism moms, we all want to stay close to the information, to the networking. That's how we learn. That's how, from other moms, from other parents.
exactly right. We
is
build
how we
communities.
get the information. We build, you know, I remember Shannon once saying to me, for the first time, I really feel like I have a tribe.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly, that's exactly
We do.
right.
We have a tribe. It's the autism tribe.
Yeah.
And we're all, you know, all of us that have kids are a part of it. And it's something that affects you so profoundly, not just the diagnosis and not just your child having it, but it affects the way you view the world so profoundly.
Absolutely.
And how you want to give back, I think.
Absolutely. It's a, listen, like I said, I sit here honored to be here with all of you together. The fact that she believes in We Rock, and we'll start crying, that she believes in We Rock and wants to come on board, that we now have a nonprofit that can help assist her.
And how
You know,
does
that's
that
our-
work? Tell us how
well,
we could, how
that's my new-
viewers can raise
Yeah,
money.
it's my new baby. You
Okay.
know, it's amazing. And that's when I come on last and we were just talking about it, but we raised over $250,000 our first year.
That's
Can you believe it since we were here? It was
amazing.
It's awesome.
That's not
Now-
easy. Knowing as somebody who
No.
runs a national nonprofit, you know, Act Today, it's not an easy thing.
It's not, but you know what's great is, for example, like now they're having even family members. Okay, so family members. Okay, here's $5,000 towards your franchise. Here's $2,000. Here's $100. So they're able to donate to My Brother Rocks the Spectrum in honor of We Rock LA.
Okay.
That's
Which
what's
is
great.
wonderful.
So
So
they can
families
go-
need to know that they
yeah.
can get help.
How do they access
We're
it?
almost out of time, so how can they find out more about franchising?
So go on WRTSfranchise.com.
Okay.
It'll tell you more about franchising.
Okay.
And then go on My Brother Rocks
Rocks
the
the
Spectrum
Spectrum.
Foundation.org, and you'll be able to see how owners can fundraise to open up
Yeah.
their very own We Rocks, which
Okay.
is, that's what it's about.
It is
Yes.
what it's
That's
all
what
about.
it's about.
And if you are sitting there at home and you want to do something fabulous, because sometimes it just feels good to give for somebody
Mm-hmm.
else, donate to Julie's We Rock the
Yay.
Spectrum for her family. Give them that push up, because you know that kind of thing comes back times two.
And it's
Absolutely.
going to help so many families to have a We Rock the
Absolutely,
Spectrum
and you'll be a
in
part
Los
of that.
Angeles.
We've talked about our circle moments. You can
Yeah.
be a part of that circle too. So donate to that. Tell them the
Thank
website again, because we've got less than a minute left.
It's WRTSfranchise.com, and then you go on to help Julie and other families. you go on my Brother Rocks the Spectrum Foundation.org.
Okay. Definitely check that out. Look at it for yourself. As you mentioned, now Los Angeles is full, but there are other places where you can franchise, and you should.
And
It's a great-
internationally, and we have international viewers.
We
so
do.
you never know.
I
We
know
might have
people are
somebody,
getting-
you
India
know,
and Dubai are going to
yeah,
be
they're.
calling you now.
They already
Coming. Yes? Okay, all right, there we
Great.
go. We're totally out of time. I just want to remind everybody we got a great guest tomorrow in the first hour. Joanne Lara is going to be here talking about the China trip.
Wonderful.
And about the documentary that she made that is being featured in the Golden Door. So I'll be with you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.